Hello, everybody, and welcome to the reality show brought to you by the Ayn Rand Center UK. I know it's been a long time since I've seen you. I was just on the Daily Objective, but here I am with a group of fun folks to talk about interesting things. Whoops. And we got a little reverb there, but that's okay. Today we've got three topics to apply objectivism today to, and the first one will be, what should we do about refugees? Now, apparently the UK is having a little bit of difficulties with refugees coming over, and their plan was to fund a program to send them off to Rwanda. Couldn't think of a better place. If I were a refugee, where would I want to go? Rwanda, right? Well, this plan is sort of rife with all kinds of corruption and issues and problems. And I think we're going to have some very interesting discussion about what should be done about immigration and refugees in general. I think us objectivists have a very unique perspective on this. The second topic will be, a mother in Australia has refused to get rid of her child's head lice. Why? Because she's a vegan and she believes all things have a right to life. So what does she do? Well, she combs the lice out and the nits out into her garden to give the lice the best possible chance of surviving. Now, the fact that these lice are probably sucking the blood out of her daughter's skin and making her miserable, I think matters less. But we'll discuss this. I think us objectivists will be probably pretty much in line with almost every other sane human being on this issue. And the last one, which I think is a very interesting topic, and I'm going to wonder if there's going to be divergent opinions on, is, should jury duty be mandatory? Now, this will be a rich topic for all of us. Joining me today, Linda Cordair. How are you, Linda?
Great. Good morning from Jackson, Wyoming.
Wow, you're in Wyoming. Look at all that wonderful art behind you. I have to tell you guys, they have the best art studios. And you're still in Napa, right? In Napa and now in Wyoming.
Yep. Tale of Two Cities continues, and probably about a third of the collection in each, and then the rest of it on our website. And I run back and forth with great staff and just finding homes for the orphans every day.
Well, if you want to come home and feel empowered and refueled after a tough day, nothing better than getting a piece of art from there. Just look behind you. They're amazing pieces. And that will fill you up and make your day a lot better. Now, am I pronouncing this right? Is it Was art?
Was. Like
Was.
Yeah.
Was art. I've been with you on a couple of shows. You contribute amazing things. I believe I see that painting behind you evolving. It has been evolving. Okay.
Yeah, you'll be seeing that about every week. So
it's great. I love watching it evolve.
A new one.
Yeah, until I start a new one, but I'll be working on this one for a little while, I think.
It's great. It's almost like time-lapse photography. I get to see your process as we're discussing all these other interesting things. So, folks, Linda, first I'll start with you, since you're just right in the queue on my visual spectrum here. What do you think about the refugee issue in the UK and their decisions to attempt to send them off to Rwanda? Why are immigrants in this respect such a problem for countries today?
It hurts my heart. You think about, when they sent a whole bunch of people to Australia that they didn't want, right? It's not right. And these people are looking for a better life. This country was built on helping people have that better life. And to see them doing this and just shunning human beings like that, sending them to, of all places, like you said, Rwanda, I think is shameful. It's not okay.
It's very shameful. What do you think, Was?
Yeah, I agree too. It's just them wanting to be all these countries, and especially on the left, they want to be great altruists and help all these people. But when it comes down to actually doing it, they don't actually want to deal with it. They just want to send them away. And that's how I view a lot of like government aid and charity is. It's just the way for people to have someone else take care of it, but so they can still feel good about themselves. So I think it's really kind of disgusting. And it's funny because there was actually just recently an interview with Sharon Osbourne and Bill Maher. I don't know if you guys heard about this, but Bill Maher was given the left crap for not really caring about immigrants, putting them in hotels. And, when it was the border when it was the border, what did he say here? Don't pretend you like migrants when we send them and you freak out. Or like when it wasn't your problem, then, then you love migrants. But now that it is, you don't even know what to do with them. So.
I mean, it's true. I do have a little bit of sympathy for these red states that are being overrun at the southern border, sending the migrants to quote unquote sanctuary cities, only to find those sanctuary cities aren't as accommodating as they claim to be. It seemed to be a virtue signal at best, totally empty, like all virtue signaling. I don't think I'm alone in this. You guys are objectivists. You could tell me if you have the same sensibility that I do. I think immigration is a right. I think if your life is you have a right to your life, then moving away from a bad situation to a better situation is an absolute right. And there's no freedom-loving government in the world that should restrain you from doing that, unless, of course, you have some kind of communicable disease or you're a criminal and you're just going to bring force and ugliness and steal values from other people. Otherwise, if you're a person just trying to make a living and trying to make your life better, that's an absolute human right. What say you guys to that?
I think that people are just not paying attention to what immigration brings to this country and the amount of work, the hard work that these people do. I live in Napa, California, part-time, Jackson, Wyoming, part-time. We wouldn't be drinking those amazing wines if it wasn't for an immigrant population. Okay, folks, doesn't happen. The immigrant population are the ones that grow the grapes, that tend the grapes, that do all of the things that have to happen before someone can come in who has a venology degree and can make the actual wine. And even some of those people who are making amazing wines are immigrants that have come to this country for a better life. And they're making that better life and they're making our lives better. So to just blanketly dismiss human beings like what's being happened and sending them somewhere like Rwanda, I just can't even. It's just so hard to wrap my head around.
Now, Linda, I think the right would push back in this way. They would say, "What you're the one dismissing human beings because what you're doing is creating an underclass of citizens, a servant class, a servile class, who is being mercilessly exploited by the moneyed class." And is that fair? Because these people have to exist below the radar, below the legal radar. They're taken advantage of by everybody. And because they're quote unquote illegal, there's nothing they can really do about it. What say you to say that Tucker Carlson response?
So a lot of these people make a lot of money doing what they do. And they make that money because they are hardworking people. They show up for work every day. They go in the fields or wherever it is that they need to go to do their jobs, and they work. They don't complain. I have worked out there shoulder to shoulder with them. I have friends who own vineyards, and occasionally, it's fun to go out there and pick grapes. It gives you a totally different appreciation for that next glass of wine. I've seen how hard they work, and I've seen how much they make, and they earn every penny of it.
Well, let's also say that even if they start out at the lower end of the economic rung, as they would, because they're coming here from nothing, going to something, and they have to build something up. This is the foundation for future generations of those immigrant families to become doctors and lawyers and computer programmers, that person that will develop the next app that will change life as we know it, or the next invention that will change life as we know it. Jax, I know you're coming in the middle of the conversation. Welcome. I don't know how much of it you heard. How do you feel about this immigrant situation in the UK? I do have some other things to add as to why I think they're pushing immigrants out and why we are anti-immigration. And we should discuss those things too, because objectivists have a unique point of view. But what say you about the UK's decision to send them to Rwanda, a paradise on earth?
Well, actually, just quickly, I'm pretty sure
Yes.
that they actually rejected it. And no one's been sent to Rwanda yet. It has to go back to court, I guess.
That's true. It has been rejected. So thank you for standing up for some semblance of reason over there in the UK. Oh, hopefully it won't rear its ugly head again, but still the sentiment is there. The anti-immigration.
They want to do it.
Yeah, the anti-refugee sentiment is there. It's in France. It's all over the place. Jax, what do you think about this?
First of all, hi, everybody. And I think, hey, Linda, hey, Waz. Also, hi, Mark, Mark. I don't know if this has already been, because I came in a little bit late, so I don't know if you guys have already talked about this, but when I didn't have a chance to like really read the entire article, but I think I get kind of the general gist of it. I think it's rather shameful for one country to kick a group of people out because they just don't want to deal with it. But I do understand and I'm pro-immigration. I'm pro-immigration with caveats, meaning I don't want criminals or people that are going to spread diseases, especially diseases that a country has worked very hard to eradicate from itself. But I would have zero problem if we didn't have entitlement programs. If there wasn't the issue of immigrants coming in and working quote unquote illegally, but then reaping the benefits of the entitlements that we pay for. But I will also note that most of the illegal workers that I have known, a lot of them Hispanic from Mexico, don't take entitlement programs. They work completely under the table for cash, and don't really don't use like traditional entitlements except for medical and stuff. And so I'm a little bit split with that. I think the adage, give us you're tired, you're poor, you're hungry. That's the true spirit, a true American spirit. I think it should be the true worldwide spirit. And, but I also think that, when you come over, you work. And every immigrant that I have run into has been a hard worker. It's the ones that are quote unquote paying into the tax system that aren't, as we saw a lot with COVID. We saw a lot of people just quitting their jobs and taking money.
Indeed. But see, and this is the issue that can turn even somebody who believes that immigration is a right into a semi-anti-immigration follower, because we do live in a highly centralized and socialized system, and there is no escaping it. So if their children want to go to school, they're going to go to a socialized school, one in which we pay our taxes to support. And there's innumerable ways in which, not for any fault of their own, they become, in some respects, a burden on the system. And systems that are highly centralized, like in Europe and the UK, they're completely inflexible and can't take the influx of these people. Only a free market can allow these kinds of influxes of human beings and incorporate them into the job market. Of course, the right now is sounding more like the left when they claim that this just creates an underclass of people. It knocks down wages, of course, which they want to keep high for political reasons, not thinking about what those high wages do for us consumers and how they raise the cost of living for us. So yes, it is shameful that they wanted to do that. It's shameful that there's all this anti-immigration sentiment around the world. As Linda said, immigrants contribute a tremendous amount to our lives, not just in physical labor, but in inventiveness, in their minds and the cultures that they bring to our world. They are a fertile ground for human prosperity, and we need to keep it flowing, because it's a right, because movement is a right. Waz, did you have something to say? You look like you wanted to say something.
Well, just a few little points, because yes, certainly, I agree with everything, but I go back and forth because it is a burden on the people of the UK. In the article, it said that they spend $3 billion a year on hotel rooms for the asylum seekers. That's 7 million a day. I think that's euros, but either way. And the critics have claimed that the high cost of the program to send, or of the high cost of all of this is mostly due to the length of the application time, and because there's a ban on working for the asylum seekers. So you can see how the people would rather spend more. It costs more to send them to Rwanda, it said. I'm trying to look here, than it does to just keep them in the country and take care of them. So
how horrible is that, Was? How horrible is that you ban a man or a woman from working?
Right. So it's just the mixed economy playing all of this. The mixed economy makes all this stuff more complicated, and it makes it worse when there's something that's a dislocation in either the market or immigration or any surge in something. The mixed economy makes it worse, or the consequences, I would say. Like, why can't they work? Well, I'm sure it was a compromise the left made with the right, because the right loves their jobs and thinks that only people that were born in the country deserves to have a job, even though there's a shortage of workers. I mean, wasn't it just yesterday they were talking about the restaurants in the UK that won't serve people that are just a single diner. They'll only serve.
Oh, that's in Spain.
Oh, that was in Spain. Okay, well, either way, I'm sure the laws are similar and stuff, but there's obviously a surplus in demand for a lot of stuff right now, and not enough people. And I see that in almost every industry in many countries, and yet they're not allowed to work because they're so afraid of losing jobs. It doesn't make any sense.
Mark, can I add a couple of personal perspectives?
Sure.
First and foremost, I'm an immigrant. So I'm from Germany. I'm an immigrant. I'm a American citizen. I work very hard. I came over as a child. We have several artists in the gallery who are immigrants, who provide the world with tremendous beauty, who work very hard to do it. Han Wushen is one of the first ones who comes to mind. He was living in rural China outside of Wuhan. He found us online in the earlier days of the internet, and we literally got an email that said, "This is who I am. This is what I do. I want to live the American dream. Can you help me?" And, we got a lot of emails from China. There's a lot going on over there. So, not really sure what you're getting into, but he sent us a couple of paintings, and it was just instant wow. If you've ever seen his work, he's considered a living master oil painter right now. And we ended up helping sponsor him, creating a collector base for him worldwide. And he's even had paintings in auction bring over 6 figures now. This is a very
Nice.
Working man who is an immigrant, and we have several in the gallery. So I am very pro-immigration.
Yeah, and this is anecdotal as well. Most immigrants that I talk to are more American than Americans. So,
They're
yes,
not laying in the streets in LA. We're seeing a lot of footage of that lately. I would venture to guess that most of those people were born in this country.
and I would venture to guess that would probably be true. So, in a free society, you could cross borders and work. I think there are some folks out there attempting to get legislation where people can get work permits to cross the border, work, go home, be a lot more open with that. But in a free society, you should be able to cross borders, improve your station in life, work hard for what you want, and it would be at no cost to anybody else. In fact, all you'd be doing is providing values for somebody else. It's only in the altruist, morally cannibalistic world where any move a person makes is a conflict of interest with somebody else and ends up morally cannibalizing them and physically cannibalizing them. So it's time to end that ethics, folks. And what's the way to do it? Embrace rational egoism. That's the way we end the ethics of altruism. Jonathan Hoenig with
a question. I have a question for you guys. And in the process, I'll tell my father's anecdotal story. So I'm German as well. My father escaped East Germany after World War II, and he escaped in the Berlin airlift to Brazil, which is what a lot of Germans did. Lived in Brazil, went to school at night, worked as a refrigerator repairman during the day, supported his mother and his three sisters because they lost their father in the war, and then came over to America. Just missed, I believe, the deadline of the GI Bill, which was, if you guys don't know what the GI Bill was, it was you could come to America if you joined the military. Basically, you could become it's your path towards citizenship. But he still ended up joining the American military. And even then, when he wanted to actually move to America, he had to be sponsored. Somebody had to vouch for him to say that he wasn't going to be a financial burden on the country. So he had to be, and that was the same thing that Ayn Rand had to go through as well when she immigrated came over from Russia. Then he had, was subjected to a lengthy citizenship test. But my question to you guys is, what do you think of that practice that it's been around in the United States for as long as I can remember? And maybe I should do some research, but what do you think of that idea? Even if we are pro-immigration, free immigration, should this whole concept of sponsorship exist? Prove that you're not going to be a burden on the state, prove that you're going to get a job? Or should it just be, in an ideal world, should it just be completely open?
I think it should be open. I think it's unrealistic to think that all of the people who want to be here, who want to contribute to society, are going to have somebody that can sponsor them. And then that's really going to weed a lot of people out who are deserving to be here.
Yeah, and it leads to a lot of fake marriages too.
Yeah,
have you guys listened or watched the recent I think it was an interview. I didn't actually watch it, so forgive me, but with Harry Binswanger and an immigrant that had trouble getting here. She was going to work for ARI, I think. Are you guys familiar with this at all?
No.
It's a ridiculous story, and you all should listen to it. It shows how irrational our current immigration system is. Just paraphrasing, and this is paraphrasing from a paraphrase from someone else, but apparently she was an application. Yeah, Augustina Vergara. She was.
Oh yeah, I know Augustina.
She was trying to get into the country for a couple of years, and ARI was going to be the sponsor because they had a job for her. And apparently, I'm trying to remember the details now, but her father was dying, and one of the rules is when you're applying for a card or whatever, a green card to stay here to work or to become a citizen, you're not allowed to leave the country at all during that period. And if you do, you void your entire application process, and it actually puts a red mark on you applying in the future. And so she had to miss her dad's funeral because she couldn't leave the country. And on top of that, after everything, she was denied the application, and so she had to leave anyway, and she ended up getting married to someone who she was going to marry anyway. But that was how she finally got into the country to work for ARI. She had sponsors, she had a job, she had a fiance, and she was still rejected, and it just sounded like a ridiculous story.
Yeah, it is ridiculous, but the state makes pretty much everything ridiculous when it interferes with us. Matthews, I don't know. Thank you. Welcome, Matthew. Hey, what was the verdict, real fast, on the Just Stop Oil thing? Did they arrive at a verdict yet?
Well, first of all, sorry I'm late. I actually was at an out-of-town court for real today and had some trouble getting home, so apologies. I've been told there is a verdict for the mock trial, but they won't tell me what it is.
Okay. You have any you have any thoughts about this UK immigration issue and the refugees?
Well, what is happening is, in my view, absolutely awful. Clearly, we should not be packing people off to Rwanda when they're coming here as refugees. Part personally, I'm in the camp of let everyone in and welcome them with open arms, frankly.
As the rest of us seem to be on this panel. Well, hopefully we could have some influence out there in the political establishment. I sort of doubt it at this point, but we can wish and we can hope. I have some super chats with respect to this topic, so I should get to them. Jonathan Honig with $2.99. Thanks, Jonathan, for being a participant and viewer. Robert Nasir with $2. The actor, the artist, and the art goddess. Yes, thank you, Robert. Ashley shrugged for $4.99. America is where you can work. Change your circumstances with hard work. I'm a descendant of a dirt poor coal miner, and I have a very comfortable life. And she's also pretty awesome too. Thank you, Ashley. Nick Bruno gives us $10. Ryan Murphy for $5. Thank you, Nick. Ryan says, great panel, great topic, and great perspectives. Thank you so much. Robert Nasir for another $5. Anyone who listens to the immorality of the U.S. immigration system by Augustina Vergara Cid and is still anti-immigration is lacking 3 vital organs. I'll leave that up to you guys with respect to the organs involved. $2 again from Robert Nasir, a heart and the writer. The writer. What is that? The writer. What's that? Oh, yes, and the writer. That's you. That's you. Yes, you did. Thank you very much. Thank you for tuning me up there. Okay, so I think we've dealt with that. And the lawyer,
the solicitor.
And now we're going to get the solicitor. So yes, I think we've exhausted that topic. Objectivist to pro-immigration. It's a right to move to better your circumstances, and we should somehow make this a wider part of our culture. Now, there's a mother in Australia who refused to get rid of her child's head lice. She cited that she doesn't want to harm these animals since she's a vegan. Now, why is it so common for people to have these basic priorities inverted? Yeah, and I guess you can see this in the more widely popular environmentalist movement. In Matthew Humphreys, we were a few weeks ago with the Just Stop Oil movement, where it's not human life that is a priority. It's not even your loved one, your child, that's a priority, but it's something else. Who wants to take the lead on talking about this, I think, horrible woman and what she did to her kid and what it means with respect to our wider culture that sacrifices what we love for something else?
I will, as a mother to a daughter who has had lice in her early years, I think her 3 times, then gave me lice once, and I'm going to totally itch my head now. Everybody's going to start scratching their head.
Thanks, Jax. I know, just thinking about it.
Everybody will. I find this woman's actions ridiculously reprehensible and child abuse, because what she's doing is leaving the lice on this child, letting them eat her freaking scalp, and infect other children with because she's sending the child. Read the article. She's sending the child to school, letting her play with other kids. And it's completely irrational anyhow that she's combing the lice out into the field to give them a chance of life, because they don't live if they're not on the scalp. So she's basically, not only is it child abuse, but it's cruelty to the lice. If you want to take the other stance on it, lice can, unfortunately, I had to learn, because of my lice experience, I had to learn all about the whole mating cycle of nits and life cycle of lice. They cannot beyond 12 hours. They cannot survive if they're not actively on a scalp eating it. So all that she's doing is instead of humanely killing them immediately, she's just condemning them to total and complete starvation, because there's nothing else that they can exist on aside from the human.
Forget them being condemned to starvation. She's condemning her child to
I know
torture.
I'm being ironic.
It's cruel. This is child endangerment. She's subjecting her child to infections, to impetigo, to just overall discomfort. And as a mother, I cannot imagine doing that to my child. I still remember very well when I discovered lice on my daughter when she was about 3 years old. We were driving to SeaWorld. She was taking a nap, her head down on my lap, and something was moving. That was my first experience. And it just goes through. Oh gosh, yeah. See, now again, talking
Yeah,
about
I know.
it.
I'm like, I want to put my hair up
If you-
now.
If you've combed lice out of a child's hair, you understand. But this is literally an insect that's eating you. I mean, is the same woman not swat a mosquito when it lands on her and it's sucking the lifeblood? I don't know, but this is cruel. It's a lot insane. But for the child's sake, it's absolutely ridiculous, and it's child endangerment, in my opinion.
Yeah, if there's if there's a case to have a child removed from a home, it would be that. You know, it's no joke. It's ridiculous. And you're right, Linda. I mean, all the other diseases that child now is subjected to as a result, is, you know, it's cruel. I can't imagine. I just don't understand. How is it that in a world where it can be considered child abuse when you don't affirm the gender of your child, that it's perfectly okay to let them run around with head lice, infecting other people, getting themselves infected, being miserable? I don't get it.
And
I'm
this
sure
isn't a
Rand.
blister.
I'm sure
I'm sorry,
Rand would find it. I'm sure Rand would find a connection between those two seemingly disconnected things. But go ahead, Linda. I
Even
interrupted
for
you.
a vegan, that seems quite a sort of extreme stance to be taking. It's
Yes, it's more. Isn't there a religious order called the Jains that do something like that? They sweep things in front. They sweep bugs out in front of them because they don't want to step on or hurt anything, any living creature at all. That sounds sort of more like her orientation, which is a little wacky.
And then on top of that, what about the living creatures you can't see? Like, how many organisms are living on your body at any one time, and she's probably killing them constantly and doesn't even realize it, but yet she cares about all these lice so much. And then not to mention, beyond the discomfort and the possible disease that the child could get, what about the psychological effect that this likely has on the child? Because no one wants to hang out with your kid if they're going to get lice, or, you know, no parents are going to let them. Well, at least I hope the woman that found this out, that has a little girl that's friends with the little girl that has lice, I hope she stops allowing her kid to play. But because in the article, actually, I don't know if this was mentioned yet, but the mother that has the little girl that's friends with the little girl with lice wrote into a column, like an advice column, to ask what she should do, because she didn't want to stop the kid from actually playing with the other little girl because they're such good friends and they're neighbors and whatever. But she also doesn't want lice all over her daughter. And the first thing the columnist said was, this mother is a sanctimonious twit. And she brought up the point that, you know, brushing them off into the garden is just killing them slowly anyway, so it doesn't make any sense. And she actually suggested, why don't you have a little play party at your house where you're doing each other's hair and you just treat the lice for this little girl? And I found that really interesting, what the moral line of that could be. And like, you know, if the state's not doing anything about, you know, child neglect, what right do you have to do something for that child? I don't know. It's kind of interesting.
I think Murray Rothbard. Yeah. Well, I won't talk about that. Yeah. You're right. Do you have the right to step in and help that child that's being neglected and tortured like that?
I'd have to say in certain cases, yes, especially emergency cases. But then where's the line? You know, like lice, I could see that being well under the line and just do it. But like, what about a vaccine or, you know, an abortion?
John, part of the problem with that is when you get a lice infestation, it's not just in your hair, they're everywhere.
Yeah,
so as much as that person in all caring in, you know, think in doing the right thing to help rid this child, it would only be temporary because they're everywhere. They're in the bedding, they're in the carpet, they're in the curtains.
That did cross my mind too. And I don't know if that was brought up in the columnist or not, but
Now, this child deserves a better life than what she has
yeah,
right
I
now.
would say. And who knows? And can you imagine that house they live in if she doesn't kill anything? Like, her house must be filthy. It just must be disgusting. And this reminds me actually of the woman, the vegan, last week or the week before. We had the conversation where she died because all she did was eat fruit. Again,
Oh, I saw that.
it's a very extreme, you know, like Matthew was saying, this is even extreme for a vegan to have the, you know, it's not because she's a vegan. I don't think there's a whole
No,
nother.
I think that there's a, I was going to call it a fine line, but I think it's a pretty solid line between like their food principles and mental disorder. Like, I think that, you know, when you get to the point where you're effectively starving yourself, and can't put anything nutritious, won't put anything nutritious in your body, there's a mental disorder there. And the same thing with this woman with the lice. There's something mentally wrong that precludes her from being a human being that can take care of another human being. There's just something mentally missing.
Yeah, let's say that goes without saying now, but do you think there's any wider application of this ethics, this idea of sacrificing something you love, something greater for something lesser? Do you think you see this in larger movements that have popular acceptance? Certainly, almost anybody with a heart and half a brain cell can say this is awful. This is a terrible way to treat your child. It's a terrible way of orienting your ethics. But when you widen out the scope a little bit, do you see this orientation towards lots of different things? And can you expand on that? It sort of widen the scope of this argument into the philosophical realm. Linda, do you see any similarities between this kind of sacrifice and other sacrifices people make in the world?
Well, you know, it brought to mind, and I cannot remember the name, but there is a syndrome where parents hurt their children.
Munchausen syndrome by
That
proxy, yeah.
And that is smelling a little bit like this, right? So if she constantly has something to do to or for her child, that somewhere in her deranged brain, she thinks she's helping her child because she's taking the lice off. You know, add to that the whole vegan thing with, you know, let's help the fleas, but where are the lice? But we already know that that's false because she's torturing them too. But it does start to feel a little bit like that maybe, I mean, there's obviously some mental issue here. What it is would take probably a whole block of professionals. But I'm sorry, I'm all itchy. Going on to the next subject.
Well, I'm just interested in knowing if anybody sees wider applications of this. I mean, we see it as psychopathic here. We see it as somebody who's clearly mentally ill, justifying, rationalizing what she's doing.
Like the wider issue of sort of altruism in general.
Yes.
Giving up
sacrificing something. Yes.
Sorry.
Yes.
I definitely.
I think she's relying on altruism to get away with it because of the rationalization she's using. And then, you know, anytime people, I think, dismiss a mental disorder by using some popular philosophy, it's easy to, you know, slide it under because everyone kind of implicitly accepts it, but they don't even know why. So they just look the other way because they don't understand either. I don't know. I definitely see that though, that the philosophy of the culture right now excuses a lot of mental problems people have, and then they don't go treated or fixed.
Oh, they're not held accountable.
That too, yeah.
She's torturing this child. That's the bottom line.
Yeah, absolutely true. Pathologies now are considered, we're supposed to accept them. We're not supposed to change
right.
them.
Well, I mean, even if you just look at the mother that wrote the article or whatever, that wrote into the columnist, you know, she's looking at it very like wishy-washy and what should I do? And how is it not clear what you should do? But no, she wants to give that something, like let this woman off the hook for some reason, or I'm not sure. It could be her own altruism. Obviously, it's probably
Yeah,
coming.
so the problem is that it's in the name of altruism, effectively, that
Yeah.
that these, atrocities in some senses can be committed. If and I think that this woman, the lice lady, clearly has something mentally wrong with her, but she is doing it under the umbrella of altruism, and that is a fundamental problem, because the tenets of it are, effectively sacrificing what matters most for what matters less. And just under that overall rule, you're going to have situations where children are going to get harmed, where loved ones are going to get harmed, where individuals are going to be, and do, in fact, individuals are given up for animal rights, environmental rights, other rights. So it is an overall problem. Now, can we extrapolate and then further say that, those that live under the extreme altruistic mentality have mental disorders altogether? Or like at what point does
I certainly
become a mental disorder?
I certainly think bad philosophy can make you mentally ill. Well, I think, folks, we've pretty much exhausted this topic. She's a jerk. She's psychologically unwell. Her child needs to be taken away from her, and she should probably be deported to an island somewhere by herself.
Rwanda?
She should be deported to Rwanda, where there's plenty of lice and lots of vermin that she could enjoy company with. Folks, the next topic I think is a very interesting one. Should jury duty be mandatory? Now, Dr. Peikoff had some distinct opinions about juries in some of his Ford Hall Forum talks, where he seemed critical of juries and whether we should be forced to take part in them. And others think juries are the cornerstone of a free society, since we have to be judged by our peers. Now, of course, I think both perspectives are right. That's my perspective. But I want to go to our resident lawyer here, or solicitor, as they call you in the UK, and ask your opinion about this, Matthew Humphreys. What do you think of this?
Well, I've worked for years in a system where we have juries. I know what you're talking about in terms of Dr. Peikoff having certain criticisms. I get where he's coming from, but I do think on the whole we are better off with juries and with laymen, members of the public, ultimately making the decision rather than sort of judges or panels of experts.
Is it possible to have a professional jury pool?
Well, what do you mean by a professional jury pool?
I've just heard that topic sort of brought up by some pundits who think, rather than having a mandatory system where you get paid $5 a day here in the States to become a juror, sometimes you get time off if you're a federal employee or a state employee, but it's a lot harder if you're working on your own. And so they've posited the idea of having professional jurors who get paid a normal wage to go out and listen to trials. Of course, that seems like there's a lot of potential corruption that could go on in a system like that, but it also frees others up of having to deal with the nuisance and not just the time for going into jury duty, but also the real financial burden that jury duty could present to them. What say you to something like that?
Well, I guess, really, to be fair, I'm not giving you the full picture in terms of our system. We do have what we call magistrates courts who deal with, if I can put it in this way, the kind of less serious sort of offences. And magistrates are people of good standing who have volunteered to spend a number of days a year out from whatever the usual career is, actually being magistrates, and you would have a panel of typically three. You can have two in some circumstances, but typically you would have three magistrates hearing the trial and coming to a decision between them. But that's sort of restricted, as I say, to the less serious types of offences.
So, Linda, do you have any strong feelings about this jury duty thing? I've been called for jury duty probably 3 times, 4 times in my life. Actually went once. Other times I've been able to wheedle my way out of it. Now, that despite the fact that I think it really is the mainstay of liberty. It really is the linchpin of liberty for us. We need to have people in due process judged by their peers. I think that's a very important aspect.
I do agree with you on that. However, I've done some homework and I do have some very strong feelings about that as someone who is self-employed. Being forced to give up 1 day, 3 days, 3 weeks, 6 months, whatever it is, for pittance, which is what the compensation is. I have a problem with that. I have gotten out of jury duty before, frankly, got off once because I was breastfeeding. And I said, well, as long as you don't have a problem with me sitting up there on the jury nursing my child, which you're telling me I can't bring, this is a deal breaker. But and pardon my for looking down, but in Wyoming, because I can only speak for California and Wyoming, that's what I did the homework on. In Wyoming, it's $40 a day and 56 cents a mile. So $40 a day, let's say it's 3 days, it's $120. Now, the probably starting wage around here is around $20 an hour. So it's not hard to do the math at $20 an hour, what that person would make at their job versus making at jury duty. And that's somebody with just a regular hourly salary job that they go to however many days a week. If I have to close my business because I have to sit on a jury, the amount of money that I lose, not only on that day, but that then snowballs into a lot of other potential business that I've lost because no one could come into my business that day because I'm self-employed. And that applies to a lot of people. So there's a tremendous amount of money at stake there. Now, do I have a solution for that? Do I have ideas for that? Absolutely. I would like to see it be voluntary. I think there's a number of senior citizens out there, many of which still have all of their faculties, who would enjoy sitting on it. My dad would love to be on a jury, right? He is taking the opportunity every chance he can. And he has the time to do that because he's retired. There are probably a lot of these people that would benefit from even that $40 a day as a supplement to their income. College students, say master's level or doctorate level college students that could potentially do that and get, class credit, whatever, and have a little spending money for whatever they want to use it for. But as a business owner, I can't afford to get stuck on a jury for 3 days, much less 3 weeks.
Yeah, nobody self-employed could do that. So I completely sympathize with you there. What do you think? What do you think, Was?
Well, I've never been called or done jury duty, so I have no experience with this at all. But what happens if you have a regular job and you have to go for jury duty? Do they have to let you go?
Well, here's the thing: state jobs and federal jobs, they tend to those guys get off and they get compensated, so they're still getting paid for the job for that jury duty,
no,
unlike somebody. Yeah, I'm not sure how it is
a regular job. Is there a law or something that an employer has to let you go to jury duty or something, even if
California, there is. You have to. Your employer has to let you go. They're not allowed to fire you as a result of it. Whether they compensate you for it is up to the company, I believe.
Well, and whether their business suffers as a result of not being able to have that employee there, doesn't matter to California.
Well, yeah, I don't, and I'm not familiar with Leonard's arguments at all, but I tend to agree with Linda and Jax that it should be voluntary, just like taxation should be voluntary. it's probably a long way away, but I think it could be done voluntarily, especially if the government was doing less. It might have a little more money to do this kind of stuff and pay us more for its actual roles that it should be carrying out. So,
I mean, if I live
Agreed.
long enough to get to retirement, sure, I'll volunteer my time. I'll do it, but I can't volunteer my time now. And it's my time.
I think
Yeah,
Catherine,
so I
with the
don't-
dollar, with Catherine with the $1.99, I guess in reference to my professional juries idea, said that would not be your peers. Well, that's not necessarily true, but I thank you for your comment. It's something to consider. So I think we can all agree as objectivists that anything with respect to our society has to be voluntary. The government, there is no duty. There is no duty that you have to abide to because it's a duty.
I agree with that. And we also had, I mean, look how well the draft worked. And then having that turned into a voluntary army. Although I agree with Linda about, this is my time. I have been called to jury duty. I've never actually served. I usually get out of it because I have family in law enforcement. And if when it's a criminal investigation, they don't, the defense will usually excuse me. And then the one other time they asked me how I felt about eminent domain, and I was like, oh, I'm 1,000% opposed to it. And then they excused me. But I also have an issue with like a jury of my peers. I have an issue with people that haven't been trained in the law, deciding complex legal cases. And that is why I tend to sway a little bit with Mark's opinion on professional juries. I was kind of thinking of it in terms of like certifications. Like if you really want to serve as a jurist, you could go through some kind of a certification program. You don't have to go through this whole 2-4 year legal system thing, whatever. But you could, like in the same way that you could like be an EMT, or that you can be the local person at your job that's the emergency person, and you go through CPR training or something. But I feel like, throwing 12 people in a room who have had, effectively, you assume that they've had no previous experience with the law, with understanding different types of burdens of proof and stuff like that. It's always been a little scary to me.
Hey, I saw 12 Angry Men. You'd be scared if you saw that movie or remember it.
imagine getting
I
Lice
remember.
Mom on your jury.
Getting what?
The Lice Mom on your jury. That would
Yeah,
be
right. Matthew, do you have any concluding comment?
Sorry, yeah, I was just going to say, so certainly here in England, and as far as I'm aware, it's similar in the States. The juries are asked to decide questions of fact, not issues of law. The judges would make any decisions about issues of law and direct the juries as to how to treat that in their deliberations. They're only making the decision over what they think happened, and are they satisfied beyond reasonable doubt that XYZ took place, or whatever the case may be.
That's exactly the case here, but there is such a thing as jury nullification here. That is that somewhat different, where they are sort of making a statement against a particular law?
Well, the position in England at the moment is that lawyers are not allowed to argue jury nullification. Jurors here take an oath, and I believe, again, it's similar in the US. Jurors certainly here take an oath to try the case fairly based on the evidence. as opposed to any sort of external arguments. Having said that, I had a case a couple of weeks ago at the Old Bailey, the sort of famous old court in the middle of London, and they actually have a plaque up on the wall commemorating a jury who dealt with the case going back a good couple of centuries, where one of the defendants was a guy called William Penn, who some years later went on to found what is now the state of Pennsylvania. And in that case, he and another individual were charged with a grave, terrible crime of addressing an illegal religious assembly, would you believe? And the jury in that case ended up being found in contempt of court because they found them not guilty in circumstances where the judge considered that the evidence was overwhelming and it was a perverse verdict. And the jurors, or some of the jurors, then challenged that contempt finding in a higher court. And the higher court confirmed a jury cannot be penalised simply for coming to what a judge considers to be a perverse verdict. It is not for the judge to sort of speculate on the basis on which juries have decided to acquit.
And this is one of the reasons I love the Anglosphere, because that's pretty awesome.
Exactly.
That's a pretty awesome story.
Exactly. Yeah.
So just in sum, because we have to conclude, which should we do about refugees? Let people in, but in order to let people in, let them, in order to let them in order to have immigration be free, we got to end the state taking care of everybody. The paternalistic state has to go. It's not flexible enough to deal with them, and it's immoral. So that's our conclusion. What about the mother in Australia, the lice-loving mother? Well, we think there's a special rung in hell specifically devoted to her, which we hope she goes to. And should jury duty be mandatory? Absolutely not. It should be voluntary, even though it is a linchpin of our quote unquote republic. It is our freedom. It's one of the great preservers of due process. So we should have it, but it should be voluntary like anything else in a free society. Upcoming shows at 10 p.m. UK time, Life on Earth with Robert Nasir and special guest Dr. Robert Garmong on free market medicine in China. That will probably be very interesting. Robert Nasir is a great host, and I'm sure he's going to really going to find some interesting perspectives there. Guys, it's been a pleasure doing the reality show with you. Let's do this again, shall we? Like maybe tomorrow.
That's good. Great idea.
Until that time, folks, always remember to check your premises. Peace.
Peace. Cheers.
Bye.